Hello again. It's been 4 months since my last update. They've been busy months, not so much with our renovation, but with our parish activities. We headed into Lent and then Holy Week and Easter. We've just now come through the Feast of Pentecost, and in that we've moved beyond all of our restrictions in the coronavirus pandemic emergency to now be back to whatever our new normal is going to finally settle to be. But I want to be able to give you some final details with regard to the renovations that we've completed here at St. Mary of the Assumption Church. So, of course, it was well over a year ago, that we started by the removal of our windows. Workmen came from Stained Glass Resources in Hampton. They removed our windows, covered them with brown paper, and the following weekend, the whole world shut down for the coronavirus. That actually was probably a little bit of a help. It took them longer than they had planned, but in the meantime, while everyone was staying home, some of their workmen were working on our windows to clean them, to re-lead them, and to be able to restore them. They were finally brought back in September, later than we had anticipated, but they were brought back in September with a new brilliance, a really wonderful appearance. The photos that we present, even here on this video, don't capture what you see when you really see them in person. We were also very lucky. A local station in Boston picked up the story, as well as the Boston Pilot, and they had great commentary and investigative reporting on the work that we had done with regard to these windows, and their brilliance and their beauty is really magnificent to those who are here and able to see them. Just a little bit of a tease, we're looking to use one of these windows as our ornament for this year's coming Christmas ornament, to be able to hang on your tree and appreciate the beauty of it in your own home. Next, after that, we did our abatement of the asbestos. We removed in the lower church all of the piping that was covered in asbestos, the wrappings around our boiler, and all of the former system, to be able to install a new system. To remove the radiators, we had to remove the pews up here in the main church. They were taken to the original factory that created them. They sanded them, restained them, refinished them, and also brought them back. Of course, the most significant piece of all of this renovation was the change in our heating system. The former boiler was removed that created the steam heat that ran through the lower church to provide residual heat to the lower church, but the difficulty of that was that it was never able to be regulated. So the colder it was and the greater the need for heat in the upper church, the more unbearable the heat was in the lower church. And then, of course, there was, once the heat was off in the heat of the summer, there was no relief from any of that heat once it baked into the stone and found its place inside our church. So that was all removed, and in turn, we watched the installation of new electric heat pumps. These control our climate system. They provided a very efficient heat through the winter. People commented to me they could actually take their gloves off in church, open up their coat. What we discovered in the process of that, by their calculations, was that the old heating system was never fully adequate to heat the size of the space. So the heating system was always working in really cold weather to be able to keep the church warm, because it didn't provide enough cubic heat for the space. And in turn, that was part of why it was always so cold in our church. When the doors were left open or windows became drafty, it created other problems. Our new system is much more efficient. We still have some work to do outside. We want to landscape and put some fencing around the outside so that we can camouflage them a little bit and also make them more secure so that people can't get into the equipment or in any way damage that for us. One of the other great benefits of this is that the lower church now has its own system, climate control for both heat and air conditioning in our church, in the upper church and the lower church. And we've been able now, by the time I give this presentation, we've used the heat, we've turned on the air conditioning, and then as We know it got very, very cold and raw again. We turned the air conditioning off and we turned the heat back on, which would have been very costly to do in our old system, but we were able to manage that here with this new system. And now our lower church will have its own controls and also be able to be much more comfortable as well as efficient. In order to be able to do all this, we needed to install a new electrical service. We upgraded the amount of electrical power that came into the building to make that more efficient and to provide all of the electricity that we needed for new lights and this new climate control system as we did that. We really went to the wire. We had parishioners who were able to make some connections and prioritize the work that needed to be done. And by the 1st of November, we had electrical power, and we were able, before Thanksgiving, to be able to have the heat that we enjoyed through the winter, and now, of course, the air conditioning that we're looking forward to for the summer. All of our new system is behind a custom-made wainscoting. It was framed, and then it was installed. We're grateful that we did that work a year ago. As many of you know, the cost of wood and the price of doing that kind of work at this time would be at least twice and maybe even 3 or 4 times what we paid just a few months ago as a result of the COVID emergency. So our timing actually worked to our benefit. We were able to do all of that work with a minimal amount of interference in our church, as we had to be shut down for one period, and then we had restricted involvement and participation through much of the renovation. And then the last pieces that sometimes people don't notice is that the wainscoting ties into the rest of the woodwork in the church. In the front, on either side, there is an internal fire extinguisher for the safety of everybody here, and then also it ties in the back to the screen that separates the vestibule from the main nave of the church. One of the significant differences that people may not recognize, on this next slide there are actually 3 photos. The larger photo is the boxes of the zoo fans. In the lower left is the old fan that was removed. You'll see there's a red balloon that had wrapped itself around the post, and above that, what looks like a beehive or a bell is actually the new fan that was in those boxes. And so there are 7 of them now. There are 3 in the center aisle and 2 on each of the side aisles, and they move the air to be able to keep the heat pushed down to make it more efficient and cost effective, as well as to make it also more even. With the air conditioning, we don't need to run the fans. The intent is that the heat will rise, and that's fine to keep the cooler air here where we're sitting in order to be able to make it more comfortable. Perhaps nothing was more obvious and more appreciated beyond the heat itself than the new lighting. It certainly makes our church to look like a new building with the lighting that allows us to see and to be able to read and to be able to see so many different parts of our church as well. The downside of that is that it points out the other work that still needs to be done and the desperate need to be able to paint our church going forward. One of the great benefits of this lighting is not only the focal lighting for the sanctuary and for the different places in the sanctuary, but also for each of the stations of the cross. There are these magnificent paintings that line the walls of our nave are now much more visible and much more appreciated as we go forward. Work that was done, not necessarily initially planned as part of this, but with a grant that we received, we were able to create a handicap entrance to the main entrance area off of Winter Street. We're working now to be able to create electronic touchless entry where people can be able to use a button to be able to enter into the church without needing to pull on a door, or if they have a wheelchair that they would not be able to access it otherwise. We also received a security grant to give us a keyless entry system, and then also to be able to look at providing some other cameras and security to our building, which is a very important part of our modern age, unfortunately. I want to take you to the lower church in the slides that follow to show you the work that's done there, it's still not completed, but it's a lot of the work that has been done. As I mentioned, there's a new heating and air conditioning system, and those units were installed along the side walls, and there were soffits that were created with removable panels in order to be able to hide a lot of the conduit that's there, the piping that's needed, and then also lighting that will accent the stations of the cross there. In addition, we added some troughs to be able to put some lights in over the pews that would allow us again to run some wiring and conduit, but also to add lighting beyond what was there. And then there's a soffit that has been built over the sanctuary area, designed also on either end to encase the statues that are there in niches. This next slide gives you a little bit of a close-up of that, showing you on the left side the statue of the Sacred Heart. In that niche, the other side would have a statue of Our Lady. All of this is white, so it looks very bland. We're in the process with our renovation committee to investigate colors and a pattern for those colors in order to be able to bring some distinction as well as some beauty to that area and be able to highlight the architecture and to make it to come alive with greater beauty. So what you see here is just the plasterwork and the prime coating. We are now in the process of working to get colors, and then we'll be able to finish up by painting that. We're going to look to recover the kneelers and then to respace them with the pews so that it's a little bit more comfortable downstairs, and then finally clean everything before we open that back up again and return our worship to the lower church. It may happen sometime this summer, but we want to get that work done and be complete there to paint the things that have been done down there and to be able to make it appropriate for worship and a dignified space for us to be able to hold our services there. So we have the new wainscoting, we have new pews and in the upper church that have been refinished, and then we also have the lower church and the design for that has been there as well. So we've done a lot of work. All of this work, as I've mentioned in church, has been paid for, and we're delighted for that. So where do we go? We're not done. There's still much work that needs to be done. Those of you who have been to church know that we're doing some work on the vestibule. We needed to remove the plaster ceiling in the main vestibule in order to install the fire alarm and security system, and then to add new lighting. We have worked on the wooden doors. We've removed the swinging doors that will be upholstered with a fabric that will match the kneelers in the church. We've repaired the walls, skim coated them. They are now prepared for colors that we are going to approve this week and hopefully be able to start moving forward with that. And then there will be new bulletin boards that will be code compliant. We'll repair and clean the floor and put everything back so that it makes an attractive and a neat entrance for people. The last thing that we'll do is install holy water fonts for people who enter our church. Probably one of the more noticeable things already that people can see. In this next slide, you'll see three different stages in the wooden doors that are at the main entrance and then at the Winter Street. The Winter Street one was the most obvious with the cardboard coverings of the missing panes of glass and then the duct tape in different colors. Those were removed, they were re-leaded and repaired, and they have now been brought back with a protective glass so people can't push on the lead to weaken that and to bring them back to their former condition. We hope this will allow them to be preserved and to be attractive for a long time. We've done the same with the main doors. You see there again the green duct tape at the top, the black at the bottom. They have been removed. Those doors, as they slammed, were starting to separate. Some of the paneling of the door and with the tongue and groove had broken. That was glued and repaired and brought back together. New closers were put in so that they don't slam, and then the glass was brought back to give them, again, an attractive and a professional finish. So we're just looking to do those final pieces to paint, put up our new bulletin boards, the holy water fonts, and then do the cleaning to bring everything back to a state of beauty. Going forward, our bigger concern right now is the windows. You'll notice that 3 of the windows on the south side of the church are boarded. The glazing has failed. The glazing is where the wooden frame comes to meet the granite stone. And so we have investigated that. We've had 4 different bidders with that. We're going to meet with the diocese this week to ask for their approval of one of those contracts, and hopefully then be able to go forward, contract this work, and have it done in the early part of the summer. And part of that work will be to remove the wood so that we can once again see and enjoy the beauty of those windows, knowing now that rain or water will not penetrate the windows, come into the church. There are still some issues with the roofing. As they did some wiring in the attic, it was revealed to us that not all of there were places where sunlight came through. So we've been working on investigating that. The leak in the sacristy, people won't give us a clear answer. Everybody has an opinion. Is it the wood frame that's rotted? Is it the masonry that's failed? Or is it something in the roof that's deteriorated and the water's traveling through the beams? So we want to be able to investigate that, to look at that. It's a much more complicated issue, and we're still trying to be able to find the cause of the problem in order to be able to direct our funds in the ways that really needs to be the best use of our money going forward. So as we look to the future, we know that we've done a lot of work already. There's still the things that we want to see. We have some changes we want to make in our sanctuary to make that handicap accessible. One of the other pieces of that would be to return the tabernacle to the center of the sanctuary, to refinish the rest of the pews, and to install new flooring in our aisles, under the pews, and also in the sanctuary, and of course to paint the upper church to bring it back to be a great, brilliant gem of a church. The diocese has asked that we would find 3 different bidders in being able to go forward, and what we would hope to do is to contract with them and eventually have a bid that we would create a mock-up with one of them so that you could see what we're looking to do and what we would see as the future vision of our church and its beauty, and then to be able to come back and to do that. We also need to do some work on our sound system, and we have some other smaller projects that we're looking to be able to do that. So the committee is hard at work. It meets on a regular basis through all of the work that has been being done. And just a reminder that all of this work has been paid for by your generosity. Those people who continue to make their pledges, those who weren't confident in making a pledge but still continue to contribute, those who get an extra gift or a surplus or a bonus of money here and there and have sent a check in, some for $500, $1,000, or even $2,000 is all certainly greatly appreciated. Some people continue to send in $5 and $10 and $20 once a month, once a week, the second collection. All of that is an important contribution to help us in financing this work as we go forward. So we're grateful for your generosity. We appreciate most especially your patience as we continue to try to find out what needs to be done, to find people that are capable of doing that at a price that is reasonable and fair for the work that they do, as well as for what we can be able to afford. So here we are, 15 months into the start of this project, and we're still going strong. We still have money in the bank, and we are looking forward to be able to use that in a way that is responsible and efficient and effective to create our church to be beautiful once again. Thank you for your support. We continue to appreciate all of your generosity. Thank you very much. Muito obrigado. Muchísimas gracias. Have a great day.